Welcome. Welcome to another edition of More Bad News, brought to you as always by Camel Cigarettes. Take the Camel's Challenge, smoke Camels for 30 days and see for yourself why more doctors smoke Camels than any other cigarette. Well, my friends, Camels were introduced to the market in 1913, and in 1936, R.J. Reynolds began to advertise Camels as a digestive aid, but in 1951, the FTC issued a cease and desist order prohibiting R.J. Reynolds Tobacco Company from claiming that Camels aided digestion. Although when I grew up, everybody knew that that was true, that there's nothing better after a big meal than to have a cigar or a cigarette, to light up. It aided digestion. Everybody knew that was true. But they couldn't advertise that. And in 1946, Camels began their 30-day challenge with the ad proclaiming that more doctors smoke Camels than any other cigarette. And as I've said before, that claim is true. By the 1920s, nearly half of all cigarettes sold in America were Camels, and Camels are still the best-selling cigarettes in the world. Cigarette sales in the US have fallen since 1981, but Americans still smoke 300 billion cigarettes in any given year. The reason Camels is the sole sponsor of my show is that the cigarette industry created the playbook that was picked up by the fossil fuel companies. My friend Robert Proctor, who is the author of a number of books on tobacco and a number of articles. He's the author of this book, The Nazi War on Cancer, which was must reading in my classes. He says that estimated that over the past century, Camels has caused about 4 million deaths. But even more significant, the tobacco company playbook helped to fight off regulation and cast out for over 3 decades. And the relationship of the tobacco companies, the fossil fuel companies, the tobacco companies created the playbook that the fossil fuel companies picked up and used to cast out and to prevent action on our fossil fuel addiction for the last 3 decades. And it is now beyond redemption. We are, our species is heading towards extinction, and we owe a significant part of that to Camel cigarettes. So take the Camels Challenge, smoke Camels for 30 days and see for yourself what a difference Camels can make in your life or in the life of the planet. Well, my friends, it's been another week of really terrible news, but I won't get into all of it. Yesterday was the National Day of Hate, called by anti-Semites around the United States to, gather around synagogues with bullhorns and frighten little children as they leave the synagogue. It's like I mentioned that in my career, my son Isaac, at 10 years old, picked up the phone, and some just vicious person said he was going to kill him and cut him up into pieces and ship him back to his father in boxes. The viciousness can be seen all over the place, with people's ideologies. The violence is just everywhere. You try to bury your son, and these people from this church are there screaming about gay people. At any rate, last week I did a really a really terrible show on Jane Lepore, but it was a great topic, and I want you to know I put this on the cover of my thing, but I just got the book now. I hadn't read it when I was but I had read the reviews of it, and I since then have looked online on YouTube. Jill Lepore has these absolutely fabulous talks on Jane Franklin, and don't bother listening to mine. It just consider it a recommendation. Go over and check it out. It's wonderful stuff. It's a great story. So I want to make it short this week. I had a terrible night last night. See, one of the things about my reality is that, I'm a shut in, I go nowhere. I socialize not at all. I do not go to, I used to go to the synagogue, for example. I was pretty ritual kind of person, and I like to be, at but not anymore. I wouldn't even go on the high holy days, and I just don't. The only things I do are necessities. Basically, I am a shut-in. I don't communicate or socialize at all. I sit here and we study Talmud, read, prepare these shows. This is the one thing I do during the week. But this week, we had the release of a podcast sponsored by the National Endowment for Humanities on my eugenics work. It's over an hour, and it's just a tribute to my career, and it is just lovely. I can't recommend it more. I'm going to share my screen and show you what it looks like. I'll put the so it's called Distillations, using sources from science to understand the world. This episode 3 is called Keepers of the Flame, and because this is an article I wrote, Race and Reason, one of the best pieces I've ever done, I think. And here's the Thunderbolt, which I had a subscription to, and it's mentioned in it. This is the white man's viewpoint, the Thunderbolt, and I tell a story about it. And there I am, and there's Phil Rushton, and it is just a fabulous tribute to my work, and I just can't recommend it more. So I was saying last night I had a terrible night because I got diverted here. This is what's happening. My head doesn't work the way it used to, and I know that for sure. Because I produced scholarly work that took a tremendous amount of concentration. Now I don't have the concentration to remember to give my dog. She's a senior and she needs her medicines at night, otherwise she's not going to sleep. And she was up all night, and I didn't realize that I hadn't given her pills, and so there was there's no rest for the wicked. So I just wanted to tell you a few things about bringing an end to the section on the American Revolution. I've come at it from a few different perspectives, and basically this was the longest war that we ever fought until the Vietnam War. It was until the Korean War. It was the only war in which black and white soldiers fought in integrated units. After this, they would always be segregated, and it was devastating. It left the country completely devastated and without a functional federal government. There were state governments, but not a federal government, and it was totally crazy. So we're going to get into that. This period from 1783 to 1789, which is the period in which the federal government of the United States was under the Articles of Confederation, and we'll talk about that some more next week. But one of the things that came out in this podcast was the fact that I have been extremely prescient in my career. That the reason why they did the podcast on my work was because I was the first and leading person to talk about eugenics flowing out of World War II and the Nazi era, and the connection between contemporary American academics and fascism and the Nazis, and direct connections to the Nazis, and that pretty much nobody else was seeing. And the reason for that was because I was reading the Thunderbolt. I was reading the right-wing newspapers. I joined these organizations. I went to their rallies, and so I knew how vicious and vile these people were. And when I picked up a copy of the Thunderbolt and saw Nobel laureate William Shockley, big 2-page piece on him, in which he is, contributing to it, and he says in Playboy magazine that I have appeared, in the Thunderbolt prominently, and I put them ahead of much of the American press because I get news there that I don't see anyplace else. So one of the things that I said was that I'm sitting around my kitchen table with a Thunderbolt, and Shockley's sitting around his kitchen table with a Thunderbolt, and so I knew exactly where his head was at. whereas nobody else did. I mean, people just were ignoring this. And I found that there were many other prominent American academics who had no problem sponsoring really vile, vicious neo-Nazi or Nazi organizations. So looking back, history is understood from the present, from where we are. And so I'm looking back now at the American Revolution, not as the beginning of this progressive move towards democracy, but as the continuation of European imperialism. This is the last stage of humanity. The American Revolution introduces the final stage in which the United States will replace England as the great imperial power and lead the world to destruction about 100,000 times faster than any other previous mass extinction event. And we're totally locked into this. So when I look back at the American Revolution, just as when I was looking at the eugenics, I'm looking at it from a very different perspective. And that's what I think that I want to share with you. And next week we'll pick up with the period after the signing of the Treaty of Paris, which ends the American Revolution. And we'll pick up with that next week. And in the meantime, you have a good week, and I will see you again next week. Don't forget, take the Camels Challenge. Smoke camels for 30 days and see for yourself what a difference this product can make in your life.